As one of the John solo guys, I feel the need to teach you how to become one of us. Extreme Mode released a lot sooner than I expected, but thankfully, because the new Mirror Dungeon didn't change much since the last, I'm able to cover everything I could think of in one video. Let's not waste more time, we've got support passives to talk about. In a team setting, now that chain battles are the standard, you don't really care about support passives as you'd rather have another useful ID as a backup, instead of some minor buff that may or may not do anything. Solos are different. Because there's only one ID on the field, every single one of your support passives will activate on that one guy, granting more damage, defense and healing. Out of these categories, defense is what I consider the most important, because healing and damage can be both substituted via ego gifts, but not a lot of gifts provide damage mitigation, and especially once extreme mode hits, you'll notice the pain enemies bring. But that's not to say there aren't more options. I will go over each sinner and highlight all of the support passives that I think are worthwhile to use, not just the ones that I think are the best. However, I will not be talking about resonance-based passives because only specific IDs can make use of them, and even then, usually only after the third turn. Yi-Song unfortunately doesn't have many useful support passives. Uma-Song has, in my opinion, the best one, giving both a defense level increase and a 50 HP heal. Even though the latter is only once per encounter, I still find this incredibly useful as it can prevent immediate death from bleed. Ring and Solemn Song help regain sanity mid-turn, especially great if you run Index Dawn or an ego like Wingbeat Ishmael or Harmony Sinclair. The sanity regen helps maintain the empowered state or flipping heads and continuing the ego. I do think that Ring is the better of the two for this use case if you have them both. W-Corp Yi-Song is a solid 15% damage increase to Rupture IDs. The charge count conditional doesn't matter in a solo because there are gifts that give charge count to even not charge based IDs. It can somewhat work on non-Rupture IDs as well, but depending on the coin count you'll probably run out of Rupture before you could really wail on the enemy. DHE Yi-Song gives shield to discard IDs, so if you want to make your Rodion even more unkillable, he is a solid choice. And Rian Song is technically a damage increase, albeit a very minor one. Regret Faust is a free +1 crash power in solos because the enemy will always have 3+ debuffs on them. 7 Faust is very similar to WE Sang, the only difference is that in addition to needing Rupture, you also need Lunar Memory to guarantee the damage increase, which isn't really an issue due to how good Lunar Memory is and the fact that you'll always want to craft it in a run. Other 7 IDs get an extra 5% damage increase, which is kinda cool, I guess. Butler Faust does the same thing as Ring and Solemn Song. Finally, if all else fails, LCB Faust is a fine alternative. 25% chance to lower the enemy's offense level isn't bad. My only issue, beside the low activation rate, is the fact that it works the same turn. Meaning, if you can inflict this, you probably don't need it. T-Corp Dawn gives a 10% damage reduction against enemies with Tremor. Nixie Divergence, Damper or Oscillating Bracelet allows non-Tremor IDs to enjoy this passive. LCB Dawn gives +10% pierce damage and She Dawn +10% slash damage. I'd only consider them if your solo ID is either mono in the damage type or if their skill 3 is pierce or slash, because usually you'll end up replacing all of your skills with S3s, with a few exceptions. Lantern Dawn is an option for healing if your solo ID can generate aggro. The healing is so low that I don't really consider this worth using, but it is an option. Ryoshu has 2 support passives that I consider worth using. Drift Shoe gives 10 shield every turn in a solo, and Chef heals 15 HP once a turn if you kill an enemy. I value the shield a lot more because it effectively increases your HP pool. Base LCB Merso is the only support passive you need to care about from this guy. Just a solid 10% damage reduction with no strings attached, but I'll mention the others too. Kim Salt increases the damage of slash critical hits by 15%. DHE Mer does the same as Yi-Song, only a touch better for other DHE IDs, still I'd rather use Base Salt. Ting Tang Gang Gang Leader Honglu is pretty much the best support passive in the game for increasing damage as it gives a whopping 20% extra damage for heads coins. The vast majority of the IDs in the game are positive coin IDs, so Ting Tang Honglu is pretty much a given in all setups. Full Stop gives 10% extra damage to ammo using skills, only worth considering if you don't have Ting Tang, because currently there are no negative coin IDs with ammo. Fang Hunt is the only worthwhile option for negative coin IDs as it reduces bleed count on your ID by 2. Pretty good for positive coin IDs as well if for some reason you decide to fight the bleed heavy floor packs. Heathcliff has some pretty good and pretty weird support passives. LCB and R-Corp increase blunt and pierce damage by 10%, Harpooner can technically increase pierce damage by 30%, but you'd need to be at death's door for that to happen. If possible, I'd always use R-Corp instead. Potential Man is a solid buff to Enclair and even Queen of Hatred Dawn. Kurokomo Heathcliff is the only damage increase to slash IDs, not really good at it either because for some reason the damage increase while universal has some messy conditionals. Still better than nothing, I guess. Zweivest-ish is the only spell ID to increase our survivability, plus the defense levels aren't much, but they're better than nothing. R-Corp gives plus 10% blunt damage, Mate plus 20% damage depending on sinking potency on the enemy, and Leo technically gives 5% more blunt damage, but you'd need a blunt burn ID for it. SCB Rodion is the same as Think Tank and Gang Leader Honglu, but because it's base Rodion we're talking about, everyone has her, so other worse damage increases won't get mentioned. DHE is the only Rodion ID with a support passive that can go above a 20% increase, offering 3 blunt damage ups instead if you took a beating. My gut feeling is that it's still worse than base, not only because of the conditional but also because of how damage is calculated, but I'll leave that to the people in the comments to figure it out. However, Enclair and Queenie can benefit from this as negative coiners. But all negative coin IDs thrive better using Night of Despair instead, giving not only a damage increase but also a final power increase to negative coin IDs. Finally, if bleed continues to be a problem, Princess Rodion, just like Feng Kant Honglu, reduces your bleeding. Zweiseld Skincare is the best damage mitigation Sinclair can give us. If you don't have him, Zweives gives 3 defense level ups, which is worse, and Middle gives 2, which is a lot worse, but he also gives 2 offense level ups. Mariachi gives 10% extra damage if the enemy is at a lower sanity, and Enclair gives up to 20% extra blunt damage if you are the one on low sanity. Otis, believe it or not, has some really good support passives. LCB gives 30% damage against enemies under 0 sanity, which in a solo is extremely easy to achieve. G-Corp randomly gives 1 protection, attack power or defense power up. The latter isn't that useful, but the previous 2 are pretty good to have. 7 Otis is like 7 Faustin needing lunar memory, but the rupture conditional is now gone. Finally, Barber Otis gives 10 healing if you kill an enemy up to twice a turn. Previously, Gregor had 3 pretty good healing options for us to use, however with how demanding Extreme Mode is, all 3, LCB, Chef and G-Corp, fell out of favor. Instead I'm now running Zwei for the defense level increase. Linton Greg helps out negative sanity IDs by making them lose sanity, which funnily enough at uptime 3 the support passive makes them lose 8 SP and at uptime 4 it's only 5. Experiment with what you have, your run probably won't end due to suboptimal support passives. Next, I'll show you some example teams that I put together and soloed with on stream. This is a basic positive coin setup for 7 Faust. Because she has a lot of Rupture, I opted to use Warpy Song instead of Uma Song. This is a team for Doc and Rodion. As you can see, the support IDs are rather unusual. The reason for them is that we need 10 IDs total with syncing in their kits for Rain Cloud. I'll talk about this more once we reach the floor team section of the video. This setup is mostly normal for negative coin IDs like Enclair, however I soon found out in the middle of the run that Linton Gregor made corroding way too easy on him. I also forgot that Leo Spell would have been a better choice because Gripclair is both blunt and burn, also for no reason at all, the only item I had equipped for this run was Soup. Don't worry about it. In the previous season, I made the mistake to release the Starlight video too early. I didn't wait for Extreme Mode to come out, and when it was released, it changed everything. So when it comes to the graces this season, just take everything at ++, no exceptions. Because of the adversities, you will most likely break even or get more Starlight back than what you've spent. I'll quickly mention the important effects that can easily be forgotten. Accumulating Star Cloud makes the first sword gift each floor worth double. Intersolar Travel was changed. It now also gives a +2 clash power if you've unlocked at least 45 team packs. Star Shower gives 150 cost whenever you pick Starlight as the reward. Chance Comet gives a random gift once per floor after fusing an at least tier 3 gift. Perfected Possibility also got changed. It now gives Vestiges as well as the tier 3 tongue twist. As well as the tier 3 tongue twisters shown on screen right now. Starting gifts also changed since I last made a guide. Lamp and Lasso are still the best options strictly speaking, however it's now much more important to just pick the same keyword that your ID belongs to, so Bleed IDs pick Bleed gifts, Poise, etc. What remained the same after Extreme was released last season are the active Surge gifts that we pick. The 3 gifts that I always go for are Ashen Constellation's Blessing for the insane survivability increase, making any fatal weaknesses you might have turn back to normal or 1x, and also giving you protection. Manor Shape Music Box for the unstagger once per encounter, and finally Emergency Investigator's Badge for a revival gift after you upgrade it twice in a shop. In my honest opinion, these gifts are so important that not picking any of them is a massive blunder when soloing. All of these gifts can only come from a single floor pack each, and not getting them could just end your run once you hit extreme mode. If you're masochistic enough, Music Box is available on floor 1, but that pack is very reset heavy. Routing is really important for extreme mode runs because there are certain crucial E.G.O gifts that are only available in certain floor packs, and because the game can be funny sometimes, some of these packs can only spawn on specific floors. In this section I will go over each floor one by one, highlighting the theme packs that I think are important to visit in a run. The first floor thankfully only has a few noteworthy packs. If for some reason you did not start with Manor Shape Music Box, then your first stop should be Dregs of the Manor to pick it up, as this pack is the only way to grab Music Box, and it's also limited to the first floor. Otherwise the first floor doesn't really have important pickups. Blood Red Mane and Nagelund Hammer Scriptures from Fate and Erosion are decent for Bleed, or Vret and the Lustful IDs. The only other somewhat useful gift is Frozen Cries from the Unlovely. Floor 2 is home to probably the single most important floor pack in the entire game, Hell's Chicken. Sharp Needle and Thread is by itself a gift worth going for, but the other 4 gifts exclusive to this pack are also top tier. Tango Marinade is free clash power as long as you aren't Lamp Gregor. Contaminated Needle maxes out bleed potency, which combos quite well with Red Stain Gossipium, and the 2 chicken parts are a nice boost to Rupture and Burn. Speaking of Burn, Hot and Juicy Drumstick is one of the very few gifts that can inflict burn count, essential for burn IDs that are lacking in count like Liu Yi Song. Hell's Chicken has 5 incredible gifts, and even if you can't use all 5, 3 of these are universally good. I believe that visiting Papa Bongi in his kitchen is without question locked in every solo run. I have to say in his kitchen specifically because the other packs with Papa Bongi do not have a single unique gift, and they can still spawn on the same floor. Some people are going to yell at me for not recommending Automated Factory for Haunted Shoes to fuse with Frozen Cries, but I honestly don't believe that Hoarfrost Footprint is worth going for in a solo. I don't consider it a key item, and giving up a starting gift or the chicken pack for 2 is too high a price to pay. Unless you run an ID that can unstagger themselves, like Albina Faust, who strips away the stagger. In that case, you can skip taking Music Box and instead start with Shoes to craft Hoarfrost. Floors 3 and 4 have some options. If you didn't start with Blessing for some reason, now is your chance to get it in Hatred and Despair. Otherwise the pack I'll always pick is Miracle in District 20 because Huge Gift Sack is 2 more protection, and if you manage to get the other 2 exclusive gifts, then you can fuse Jolly Plushie, which is an incredible damage booster and survivability tool with some poise sprinkled in. There are some other floor packs that are limited to floor 3 and 4 with some juicy exclusive gifts beside Christmas pack. The main difference is that Jolly Plushie or even just Set Plushie are universally good, while the others are situational. The only packs I'd like to highlight are the Noon of Violet for Filial Love for Bleed and Misaligned Transistor for Charge. The sinking and keywordless gifts from this pack are not that good. The only other pack is Full Stop by a Bullet for universally decent gifts. On the topic of Bullet, this pack has 2 really funny gifts, those being Equalizer and Implicit Contract Renewal. Both of these gifts lower the enemy's resistances, but only up to a certain point. Lunar Memory makes all of the enemy's resistances to 2x, so you think that these 2 gifts, and others like it, are useless because they can't work together. And you'd be correct. At least until you stagger the enemy. For some unknown reason, probably because of spaghetti coding, you can raise a staggered enemy's resistances higher than 2x with gifts like Equalizer. This screenshot is taken with Contract and the 3 physical resistance reduction gifts. Is this useful? Kind of. Tremor Barrier, an optional adversity you can get after clearing floor 12, removes the enemy's first stagger threshold, making it harder to stagger them, or in some cases impossible to do so. But when it does happen, you'll be able to deal a lot more pain. These are the only floor packs that I wanted to highlight. If for some reason none of them take your fancy, you can start going for the other packs as well. Every floor mentioned here onwards can be picked up before Extreme Mode starts, whenever. So I will just list out the packs in the order I usually try to grab them. Important to mention that because we picked all the graces, we have 5 refreshes to use. If you can get a gift guaranteed from a floor and reward, you should pick that pack and disregard the order I'm giving here. On the topic of floor and rewards, I still try to get the gift from the shop, just in case the mounting trial that comes with the gift is terrible. Morbius used to be floor 4 exclusive, thankfully it no longer is, but I still try to grab it it as early as possible because Brittle takes care of most survivability problems that could emerge. Metronome is also decent when upgraded. Line 1 for False Halo's incredible 108% damage increase. Snake Slew is also decent. Nocturnal Sweeping Boggak for Shadow Bamboo Hat's 30% damage reduction. If you run a Slash ID, you can also enjoy a juicy damage boost as well. The other gift I specifically recommend the rerun and not the OG pack is Enter the BB. This is a fusion gift that is incredibly busted. Obviously the middle IDs enjoy a massive boost and the gift heals blunt IDs, but that's not what I care about. The reason why this gift is incredibly busted is the very first line. When an ally is hit, apply 3 offense level up on the ally and inflict +4 bleed count on the attacker, once per skill. Let me rephrase that in another way. Every skill that hits you gives you 3 offense level ups and gives the enemy 4 bleed count. The only cap on this is that it triggers once per skill, meaning if you get hit via 10 skills, you inflict 10 bleed count onto the enemy, meaning that non-bleed IDs can fully maintain bleed count on the enemy just from this gift alone. The rest of the gift is also goated as hell, but this single line makes this gift universally insane. Line 3 for Unhedged Embers, probably the most important gift in the game for Extreme mode, aside from Blessing, as it is a revival gift that prevents your HP from falling below 1 for an entire turn. This means that you could take a million damage a million times and just walk it off from the revive on the next turn. Embers doesn't unstagger upon the revival though, which is also a reason why we start with Music Box. Contempt of the Gaze of Contempt from this same pack is also a damage increase if you upgrade it twice. Sunk Gloom has Rain Cloud, which, funnily enough, does work in a solo. You just need your support IDs to have syncing in their base kit. You need 10 IDs total, so that's your solo guy and 9 more. I think it's worth going for the extra coin power, even if not all the syncing support passives are good. I've already shown my Dokkentrodion team, but here it is again. My 2 flex options went to Base Merceau for damage reduction and Dayoshi for the shield. La Mancha Land All Day Pass is a solid gift to make sure even your most coin hungry IDs never run out of poise count. It can be picked up at your local La Mancha Land Reopening, the Infinite Procession, or the Dream Ending. I usually go for it if my guy has a 3 or more coin skill 3. A different variant that's an upgrade for Rupture IDs is Moon in the Water from the Surrendered Witnessing. This pack also has Flower in the Mirror for some extra Rupture potency and count. Both of these gifts work like Rain Crowd, by the way, so it is possible to assemble a full Rupture and Poise bench team, but I don't think it's that worth it. Blade and Artwork has Someone's Azure Blade, which is a boost to critical damage if your ID has a shield. Linshu gives shield every turn, and there are also gifts that give charge barrier like Patrolling Flashlight and Material Interference Shield, which in turn gives shield. Alternatively, Black Iron Barding from Spring Cultivation also gives 15 shield each turn. Christmas Boggak is only worth going to if you couldn't manage to fuse Jolly Plushie earlier. Otherwise, this pack has more gifts, and most of them are not that great, if for some reason you run a Discharge ID like... Crafting Shadow Monster is actually worth in that case. Time Killing Time Boggak is the only place where you can get Emergency Investigator badge if you didn't start with it. It's a keywordless reviver item that I would honestly not gamble for mid-run, but if you would, then the rerun is the only pack where you can. The clock hats are also fairly decent from this pack. There are other packs as well that are worth visiting. These ones are just the more generally useful ones. Like for example, if you're running a Ring ID, then you should also hit up the 2 Ring packs, Blade and Artwork, as mentioned before, and Twinning Threads. I'm not going to list out every pack we're going for because that would take hours, but your run probably won't fail because you didn't visit one of these packs. If you want an easy place to see which floor packs have what, you can click on floor themes under game modes on the Limbus wiki. So here is an example of all places I personally would go for and on what floor, including the gifts that are there. Blade and Artwork is a flex slot, the rest are too important to give up on. Line 3 also shows up in Extreme mode, so you can pick it up there as well, but try to get it as early as you can. A trick I want to recommend in Extreme mode before I start talking about the packs itself is to always heal your solo guy in the shop. This is because while there are adversities that lower your maximum sanity, they don't actually do this. Instead, they lower the maximum sanity you can go back up to in combat, meaning if you heal to 45 sanity in the shop, you will start the fight at 45 sanity. Now the actual packs. By far the easiest pack in all of Extreme is Into a Certain Library's book, where you fight the Fairy Queen. If you're struggling on the final floor at 60 adversity, pick this one to end the run. The second easiest pack for solos is SEACR, which is the pack with a lot of crabs. I'd pick this at floor 14 if you're struggling. Any mob fights against a lot of enemies I usually do before floor 13, because one of the adversities that you can pick at the end of floor 12 is Tremor Barrier, which removes the first Stagger threshold. So the On of Green, the Blood Fiends, Clear All Catty, etc. I only dare fight early on. Bridle of Infinity is something I'd recommend fighting midway through Extreme if you want, for you who love the city, because if you get no hidden bosses, you can't clash, and if you can't clash, your only hope of beating the Centipede is via bursting it down before it could act. For you who love the city is almost a revival item. The first time your HP falls below 30% from an attack, you will regain 80% of your maximum health on the following turn. It combos rather well with Embers, which stops you from death on the first turn, but only heals 20% HP. I think this is a solid survivability increase in solos, but not necessarily worth going here just to get it. Most of the newer IDs don't have a problem bursting bro down, especially if you aim for the head, because breaking the shield will stagger the boss. But if you decide to run an ID with negative damage, like Sloshmael, your only hope of beating it is with Wing Beat. Efflorescent Greenery should be avoided at all costs, because Drenched Gossipion inflicts infinite bleed, Rose Hunter is chill because it's the second fight, and Dongback will just kidnap you and force you to fail the fight if you can't burst her down. So my ideal extreme mode lineup for the easiest MD is this. But that's not all. MDE finally received the update I've been waiting for to release this guide. Bunch of new floor packs and unique gifts got added. These packs are not necessary for beating MDE, but they are fun and the gifts they bring are awesome. The way these new packs work is a whole lot different than the old ones. All of them have a unique gift tied to them that you will always get after defeating the boss, before you even get to pick the floor and reward. I will now go over these new packs in the order of their general usefulness. Mid-range K-Corp Engpule comes from Code Purple, and it is quite the awesome addition to solos, as it is another revival gift. The way it works is kinda funky though. The order your revival item comes out in is Embers first, then Empule, then Badge. However, you need to survive until the attack is over before you could activate Badge. If you use Empules and die again from the same skill used against you, you will not trigger a Badge as revive. Komi's mini gift comes from Midspring Night's Dream 2, and it is the last universally usable new gift. It just gives some healing if you're at less than 60% HP, and also some minor offense level ups. I wouldn't say it's worth getting. Rules of the Middle comes from Complete and Total Extermination, and it is a solid +1 coin power for blunt IDs, +2 if they're also from the middle. And because you're always getting hit, you basically always get 6 offense level ups as well. The rest needs multiple middle IDs, so I won't go over them. The family's Resentment comes from the Master of La Mancha Land, and it is quite a buff for bleed IDs, giving healing or up to 2 attack power ups if you're already maxed out on HP. It also helps generate Blood Feast, but in a solo, the bottleneck is consuming Blood Feast, so it doesn't really matter. But you do get offense level ups for consuming it with this gift. Similarly, Carousel Figurine from Blessed Carnival doubles down on supporting Blood Fiends, and it does so really well. It doubles the Blood Feast consumed, it gives a large amount of the Blood Fiend's unique status effects to them, and it buffs Manager Don even further. Another round from Fairy Tail gives a solid 20% damage increase to charge and discharge IDs, while also giving some of the consumed count back to them at skill end. Because you regain half of what you used at skill end, you're also potentially able to chain together multiple empowered attacks one after another. On the topic of Tremor, Clappity Clap from Blood-Tinged Ictic Odor makes the enemy amplitude entangle into a random Tremor flavor. We have Scorching Strawberry, Orange Hemorrhage, Decayed Grape, also known as Raisin, Washer Fluid and Coolant. You do need a base skill with any amount of Tremor for this to work though. Burning Hate from Bearers of Fate is a solid increase to burn damage if you can keep the count up high. Nail and Hammer from Line 1 Madness is a much needed buff to Encore Fanatics, you know, the old Season 1 Encore. It does a lot to make them better, giving them +3 base power, +100% more damage and even more bleed. Finally, for the Capo from Chochiu is pretty much designed for Lysol, but other ammo running IDs can make use of it. It gives some haste, bursts Tremor and deals an okay amount of red damage if the enemy has both burn and Tremor. It also gives an incredible boost to Savage Tiger Sayer's perfected Flurry of Blades, and I guess other ammo red skills as well. So where should we go then? Floor 15 doesn't matter as it is the end of the run, so you can keep into a certain library's book there for an easy time. As for the rest, the first floor you do should be Code Purple for the extra revive. Most IDs will have at least one other usable gift, so you should get that on your next floor. Or alternatively, you can kinda safely skip Code Purple, because the third revive isn't as useful as you may think it is. In my testing, Badge and Embers are enough to keep you alive for most of the fights. The only ones that may need it are high floor hidden bosses, but they are so cracked that not even MPUs can help most of the time. but depending on the ID you're on, it may be wise to get Embers before MD starts to get another floor for the new gifts. Or if you can use 3 of these gifts, you could also drop Bridle of Infinity, because for you who love the city, isn't super important to get. Cursed Ego gifts do not exist, I have never seen them before, but if they turn out to be real, there are only 3 of them: Baleful Hondo, Tarnished Gauntlet, and Record Logs of that day. Baleful Hondo makes your clash power 1 less and you'll take 20% increased damage for 6 encounters. After that it will turn into 1 with the blade, which makes you deal 25% more damage. It is safe to take the sword. Tarnished Gauntlet makes your speed worse by 5, which is honestly not bad in a solo. It will just make your first turn guaranteed slower than the enemy. Once blessed, after 6 encounters, it turns into Golden Hour, with the only worthwhile bonus being +2 final power. It is safe to use the device. Record Logs of that day is absolutely not happening. For 6 encounters, your solo guy will be forcefully staggered with nothing to save them from it. Even with a tanky ID and thrill, this shit is almost hopeless, so don't even think about trying to get it. It is not safe to play the recording. If you cheat and bring in another ID, potentialities will be the blessed gift you receive. It is not that good because you have Music Box already, and you will rarely experience a second stagger. However, 10 lunacy is 10 lunacy, and you should cheat if it's your first time seeing it. I know I did. When it comes to hidden bosses, my biggest advice is to only take them on either floor 11, 12 or at most 13, if you're running a cracked ID. Because after a certain point, you will reach a state where it's actually impossible to beat them, even with all these new gifts in our arsenal. If you've managed to get a hidden boss early into MDE and still have your Durantes, you can then try for them past floor 13 as well, but floor 15 is straight up suicide, even with Durantes and hidden boss gifts. Keep in mind that you can use 2 Durantes now if you've caught up with the story progression, so Merositas and Ira should be safe for hidden bosses. Superbia isn't that useful anymore sadly, but it can still help out in a pinch if you manage to ego spam your resources away. If you don't want your run to end prematurely, then skip them once you're at or beyond floor 13. And now for something that I've already explained once in the past so well that I'm just going to steal from my own video. Take it away, me from the past. Targeting works differently depending on the encounter type. If you want to double check the turn order, then you can click on the arrow icons a few times to first remove them all, then enable just the single arrow which shows the exact turn order. Except in any of the MV Pekatula fights where the first turn is messed up for some reason. In regular encounters, if any enemy has a higher speed than you, then you get hit. You can only intercept this attack with a clashable defensive skill, but otherwise they will hit you before you can act. By they, I mean every single enemy with a faster speed. No, unfortunately you can just simply evade or guard, as it will only go out against the slowest enemy. If your current speed is the same as an enemy's, then it's a 50-50 who's going to attack first, and if you're faster than everyone, then you are going to attack the slowest enemy and their skill slots first, before moving on to the second slowest enemy and repeating this until you run out of skill slots. However, in regular encounters, clashing has a higher priority, so if the slowest enemy got staggered and you'd make an unopposed attack, or they'd use a non-clashable defensive skill against your attack, you will delay attacking them until all of your clashes are done before returning to hitting them. In focused encounters, targeting is even more dumb. If you are fighting a single enemy, we can ignore speed and instead focus on the enemy's body parts. To be more precise, we need to focus on where they're positioned in the enemy skill bar. The order you'll be attacked in is right to left from the body parts and then left to right from the skills within the body parts. If your speed is higher than the enemy's, the body part with the lowest speed will always be the first thing you'll clash with, but the order you clash within a body part depends on the left to right rule. If you're slower than the enemy, then you need to target the fastest body part with the left to right rule in mind to clash before being hit. Keep in mind that if you want to evade all attacks with a single skill or get your shield up as early as possible, you will always need to target like this even if you are faster. With multiple enemies, the turn order is completely messed up. It usually depends on speed, so the faster the enemy, the sooner you attack them and the slower ones get hit later. The keyword is usually. I can't figure out why sometimes it doesn't work like this, why you just attack in a seemingly random order in some fights. However, both Power Guard and Counter are capable of altering the turn order if one of two things happen. If either you are slower than the fastest enemy or the skill slot you targeted doesn't result in a clash, then you will instead use your clashable defensive skill against the fastest enemy skill targeting you. This is only useful on the first turn of an encounter when you are still quite slow for this to happen. When targeting the same slot multiple times, the skill order depends on when you've targeted that slot. So the first skill you've selected will go first, the second will go second, you get the idea. AoE skills and Ego tends to target the slowest skill slots you aren't clashing with, so you can influence its targeting by first using your other skills and then the Ego. And while normally skills don't carry over to the next target in a focus focused encounter when the enemy dies. Skills and E.G.O with multiple attack weights will still come out, even if the main target is dead, but only skills with more than one attack weight by default, so stuff like Magic Bullet Otis' skill 3 is still treated like a one attack weight skill, regardless of how many enemies it could actually hit. On the topic of E.G.O, if you used any, then the last used E.G.O will be the one you will corrode to, otherwise it's random between your equipped E.G.Os. If your ID has either an evade or a regular guard as their defensive skill, there are a few tricks we can use. Let's say you're unsure about winning a clash in a focused encounter. You can slot a defensive under the clash and it will activate if you lose the clash. You can even do this to unbreakable coins if you win the clash to defend against the cracked coins. Both are useful in later throws, especially in extreme. Essentially what I said about regular encounters is a lie, and there is a way to evade the majority of the attacks in a turn. Once it's at least the second turn and you can use 2 skill slots against an opponent with at least 2 skill slots. If they're low on HP and you can kill them in just a single skill, you can then slot in an evade or a guard against the second skill slot, and after killing the enemy, you will use your defense against the next unopposed attack you take. And while a guard just gives you some shield that may or may not hold, a successful evade will roll over and keep on evading all other attacks as well, as long as you don't hit the 5%. So funnily enough, this also works in the Ahab trio fight. When you reach Shamagan era, if you try to evade a staggered Starbuck and then kill him, your evades will roll over to Ahab and you can dodge them. Alternatively, you can keep Starbuck alive and healthy and evade him the normal way, which also works to dodge Ahab's attacks. Each identity in the game has its own physical resistances, while each Zane level E.G.O determines the ID starting scene resistance. Let's take a look at She-Ishmael for this example, because everyone who completed the tutorial has her. She-Ish takes 50% less damage from slash attacks, takes 100% more damage from pierce, and takes normal amounts of blunt damage. You can only change these multipliers by getting staggered, which makes all of these numbers turn into 2x, or by getting blessing, which makes any multipliers above 1 times to 1x. Until you get staggered, that is, then it's back to 2x for everything. What you can realistically change is her scene resistances. Stack Harpoon comes by default being fatal to Lust and Slot, while also enduring 25% of gloom damage taken. These multipliers don't change when you get staggered, only when using a different E.G.O. You can replace your Zane level E.G.O with a different one before going into the dungeon if that character has another Zane level E.G.O. A more common way of changing resistances is by either awakening or corroding E.G.O, as either will instantly switch around your resistances as soon as the attack animation finishes. This is the main reason I like to recommend bringing in as many different E.G.Os as you can, because getting hit is often unavoidable, but you can avoid taking 4x damage by changing your resistances around. I mentioned corroding, and it is surprisingly useful when soloing. Without allies around, you can ignore the indiscriminate part of the corrosion and focus on the strengths it brings. Like, for example, overriding getting staggered and instantly switching your scene resistances up. Since you aren't staggered, your physical resistances also aren't turning fatal, and you even get to keep blessing up while also removing the stagger thresholds that would have staggered you. If you have the resource generation, you can overclock your E.G.Os when using them to consume more sanity, thus making it easier to corrode. Commemorative coin also helps a lot, since it can reuse single coin E.G.Os. Corroding is so strong, it can also override some for staggers as well, like Cromer's Gaze, which she applies to you on combat start, and without corroding you have no ways of beating her, as she can combo unique staggers while you are still staggered. I mean, there is a way to beat her, you just need to deal a load of damage, but that's not happening. Also, you can clash with the corrosion, further reducing the damage you would take. Learning to corrode on demand is a really useful skill to have when soloing, even better if you know how to control which E.G.O to corrode to, which you should, since I've already talked about targeting. And there you have it. My most complete guide as of yet. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, or better yet, join the Discord. I'm fairly active there, but if I don't respond, we have a bunch of other people who play the game too much and would love to help. Alternatively, you could join just to ragebait Carmen. I also regularly post updates for both videos and streams, because as you can see, I can sometimes make videos. Sometimes. Speaking of streams, I try to do at least one solo a week here on YouTube, so come say hi sometimes. With this guide finally released, I'm planning on finally streaming and reading some Arknights as well. But don't worry, the solos aren't going anywhere. I've been Silver, see you around.